If there were a word to describe 2020, that word might be uncertainty. And there is nothing more dangerous when you're running a business than not having certainty to know what all your options are, to know how you need to react, to know what's next. There is a lot happening in this world that we have no control over. But one of the things that you can control, one of the areas where you can reduce uncertainty is with your numbers, the financials, and your access to them and how you run your business. The reason we started this show was to help you succeed in a very complex environment, but you cannot succeed if you do not have a firm command of your numbers. As a business owner, you just have too many important decisions to make on a daily basis. So if you're like me, you need your numbers and you need them at your fingertips all the time. I am so glad that I got NetSuite for my business, Oxford Road. NetSuite by Oracle is the world's #1 cloud business system. Finance, HR, inventory, e-commerce, everything that you need all in one place so you can save time, money, and endless headaches. Whether you're doing $1 million or hundreds of millions of dollars in sales, NetSuite gives you visibility and control so you can manage every penny with precision. Join over 20,000 companies who trust NetSuite to go faster with confidence. NetSuite surveyed hundreds of business leaders and assembled a playbook of the top strategies they're using as America reopens for business. Get your free guide. It's called 7 Actions Businesses Need to Take Right Now, and schedule your free product tour at netsuite.com/action. That's your free guide and a free product tour right now at netsuite.com/action, netsuite.com/action. Okay, hello and welcome to this week's episode of Media's New Deal, presented by Oxford Road. Media's New Deal is a limited run series designed to help you adapt your business and leverage current market conditions so you can come out on the other side of this crisis stronger than you were before. I'm your host, Dan Granger, founder and CEO of Oxford Road. Welcome to Media's New Deal. Now, our guest today is Adam Carolla, and before we get started, I just want to take a minute to let you know that this interview was recorded before we heard the tragic news about George Floyd and before the world suddenly changed for the second time this year. So if you're struck by the tone of the interview, just please keep this in mind. When you listen to the show, you're going to hear a real insider's perspective on a host of topics within the podcast ecosystem, including best practices for working with talent on live read copy, which is something that every marketer, at least in the podcast space, should be conscious of. Now, within the episode, you're also going to hear Adam share a very strong message for brands who are afraid of sponsoring content that produces controversial opinions, and what it's like to live in a world where you both work and live in harmony with people that have entirely different views across the political spectrum, from Tucker Carlson to Jimmy Kimmel. This is an increasingly important topic as we move into one of the most divisive political battles in history as Donald Trump campaigns for a second term, and brands must decide how to advertise to an increasingly divided America. We're going to spend a lot more time on this topic in future episodes. But for now, let's start talking about Adam. So Adam really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give one anyway. Adam began his career on the nationally syndicated radio show called Loveline, which he co-hosted with Dr. Drew for over a decade. He is currently the host of the Adam Carolla Show, which actually holds the Guinness Book of World Records record for the most downloaded podcast. And he also did another first very recently by being the first podcaster to launch a daily flash briefing for Amazon Alexa and Google Home devices. Adam is reopening the live comedy world tour called Adam Carolla is Unprepared. And he has a new book coming out June 16th called I'm Your Emotional Support Animal, Navigating Our All Woke, No Joke Culture. And when he gets bored, he also produces movies. Adam, thanks for joining us today. Welcome, Adam. I understand that happy birthday is in order.
Oh yeah, I guess. I'm not into birthdays. I'm into
Shock.
achievement days. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we
No,
got you a great president. You get to be a guest spot on a marketing podcast. So happy birthday.
yeah, I always tell everyone pick out your achievement day. Pick out the day you got licensed as a contractor or got your law degree or had your first child or whatever it is. Find that achievement day and sort of make that your day of celebration.
Very good. Very good. Um, so we just went through your resume and I get exhausted reading it because you are without question one of the most prolific people in the business. Are you finding yourself getting more fatigued with all of these Zoom calls back to back all day?
No, I worked and still do in a mechanical kind of construction world. I spent my entire early life picking up tools and climbing up on roofs and climbing under buildings and that kind of stuff. And I always loved talking and ideas and jokes and that to me was free. So I've tried to kind of maintain that posture. I do getting up early, getting on an airplane, going to a city, to do a show. I get it. It's work at some point. But for me, I come from such a mechanical kind of blue collar environment that notion of getting paid for an idea or conversation still seems like it's not work to me.
What year did you start doing the podcast? Was it 2011?
2009.
2009. Yeah. So if there's a Mount Rushmore, you're definitely on it. And
It was early too. It was
yeah,
like
you
it
were
was
super early.
February 2009.
So I met you in probably 2012 to start putting ads on it. And that was incredibly early because it was all pre-serial, right? But you were really the first name to get into the business. And I think it sent a big signal when you said, I'm going to make this a full-time job. That's when, I had been putzing around with it a little bit, but then I thought, okay, there's really something happening here. What have you seen change from when you got in to today?
At the beginning, I guess there were a lot of people and personalities, and I would say to them, "You should do a podcast," and they'd say, "Fine, once every 2 weeks or something like that." And I'd say,
Mm.
"You can't really do it as a business if you just want to do it once a week or once every 2 weeks or twice a month." And they would kind of go, "Well, I know, but that's all I'm willing to commit." Like nobody thought of it as a job. And I went at it 5 days a week from February 2009. I just did it 5 days a week. I wasn't getting paid. There wasn't a business model, but I still thought of it as a job. I thought I'm going 5 days a week. And so at the beginning, people were reticent because there wasn't a model. And I think people sometimes make the mistake, which is you show me how I get paid and I'll commit. But if you can't show them how they're going to get paid, then they don't commit. Now somebody showed them how they can get paid. And so many more people are willing to commit.
Yeah. So very recently, Podcast One has been acquired / merged with, is it LiveX Live or Live by Live? I'm not sure which.
I think it's Live by Live, like South by Southwest, but
Got it.
they need to hire a PR firm and figure that one out because everyone says Live X Live.
This is not the first time this has come up, probably. So this is a big shift, I think, especially with you and Norm launching this thing together and really building it to what it is. What changes in your world as a result of the acquisition?
Not a lot practically, sort of from a day-to-day standpoint. There is a new opportunity to innovate a live streaming podcast. We did that last week, and there was a big Forbes article on it the other day.
Yeah, congratulations. Over 1 million simultaneous streams, as I understand it.
in my bad wiring and low self-esteem, I will say their numbers are 1.1 million. I can never picture 1.1 million sitting around watching me in Houston, but that's their data.
Well, we don't know who these people are, but we'll believe that there were 1.1 million of whoever they were.
However they collect their data, that's the number they came up with. But so for me, I started podcasting in early 2009. By the end of 2009, I had started doing live podcasts. I think we went to the Irvine Improv and we're actually doing live podcasts in front of an audience. And there were people who podcasted before me for sure. But I'll take some credit as one of the pioneers of the live comedy podcast. It's basically going to comedy clubs and instead of doing a stand-up show, doing a podcast. And, it's been 11 years since we sort of pioneered that live podcast thing. And I kind of keep thinking like, what's next? And I'm starting to think maybe streaming that live podcast so you can give people that experience of sort of being in the club without having to buy a ticket or leave the house or shelter in place and all that. So that might be a nice byproduct of this merger, being able to do live streaming shows from clubs.
Well, you made history there. You got in the Guinness Book on the podcast, and I know we've just worked together on a project to get you a flash briefing from a known podcaster. You're really the first one in for Alexa and Google Home for that new platform too. So whether you're being humble or you are just like 10 years ahead of everybody, I think you've done well. So
I just don't really have that gear where I try to reflect on things I've done or who would be paying attention or that. My focus is sort of what's next. I don't have a strong, let's sit back and look at what you've done or what you've been responsible for.
So, I don't know how closely you follow everybody else in the business, but obviously you know about the acquisition of Rogan's content, or at least the licensing deal on Spotify. Do you have an opinion about what that means for the rest of the industry?
I think it's good. I've always, Mike August and I, when we started this business, Mike's approach to it and my approach to it as well was we didn't really have competition. We're all sort of podcasters together. And if Joe can get paid a ton of money for that, all that does is set a precedent for others to get paid. So, my feeling is, the rising tide lifts all boats. And I've always kind of felt that way. I've always been happy to go on other people's podcasts or have them come on to my podcast because I just felt like we were sort of a podcast community. And I was actually happy to read, somebody sent me a tweet yesterday that Joe Rogan sent out in December of 2009. And it said, just got done doing Carolla's podcast, makes me kind of think I should do something online myself. And I thought, oh, if I was the inspiration in any small way for that podcast, then I'm tickled pink.
Well, I think, either directly or indirectly, we all have a podcast now, right? There's over 1 million of them on iTunes, and I suspect you helped get the ball rolling significantly. So, what I wonder is what's the harder part? Is it building the audience or is it keeping the audience?
Wow, I don't know. I've never really contemplated that. I think my job and anybody's job who's in this, it doesn't matter if you're podcasting or doing stand-up or hosting an AM radio show or speaking in front of a group of employees where there's 15 of you in the room. Like, your job is to think about your content. Like, what do you want to say? How long are you going to say it for? Who you're going to say it about? And you need to make that as good as you can make that. Judd Apatow's coming on my podcast today. I watched his 2 hour and 17-minute movie last night on my computer. I don't like watching movies on my computer. I have a big screen TV, but that's how I had to watch it. But I watch it because it was my job, because I know I'm going to talk to him, and I don't want to kind of fake my way through that interview. So for me personally, I just think, who do I want to talk to, and what do I want to talk to them about, or what's funny? And I constantly carry around a notepad, and I just make scribbles. I constantly write notes on it, and it's content, it's jokes, it's ideas. And philosophically, that's all I can do. That's kind of, I have kind of removed the responsibility of attracting audience or maintaining audience by just simply saying, I will do the best show I can do day in and day out. And other than that, I can't really control the rest of it. And I never have. And if you do a TV show, you do a radio show, Man Show, Crank Anchors, whatever, Loveline, whatever, let's do the best show we can do. That'll give us the best shot, but no guarantees.
So basically, you don't put your eye on the scoreboard. You're focused on the fundamentals, and the fundamentals will yield better results when it's all tallied.
Yeah, I've always kind of looked at it this way. It's like, I've made romantic comedies, I've made documentaries, I've made TV shows, I've written books. I have no idea what's going to be a New York Times bestseller versus what's going to be a ratings hit on Comedy Central or MTV or K-Rock Radio. I really, going in, I would have no idea if a show about puppets making prank phone calls would ever be successful, or a show with a guy named Jimmy Kimmel who no one really heard of, two guys sitting there drinking beer talking about the Man Show, or Loveline, me sitting next to Dr. Drew in the middle of the night answering, questions from teenagers. I would have no idea if any of that stuff was going to be a success. Or a podcast. My plan is, let's do the best version of this thing that we're setting out to do. If you're writing a book, write the best book you can write. If 10 people read it, then 10 people will read a great book. And if 1 million people read it, then 1 million. All that in mind, you have a much better chance of getting to the New York Times bestseller list if one of those 10 people who reads it says, this is a kick-ass book, and recommends it to a friend.
Yeah. So I heard we have a health crisis and then an economic crisis going on. How does that change things in your world, just from a business standpoint, or how does it change the work?
For me, it hasn't changed it dramatically. I'm not a fear-based person in general. So I think people think, well, maybe that's irresponsible, but I don't consider myself irresponsible. I'm not fear-based. So I do a fair amount of automotive racing. And when I do, I wear the right equipment. I'm in a car that has a roll cage. I have a 6-point harness. I know where the fire suppression system is in the car and stuff. But yet there's risk involved with doing it. So, I'm wired to be a little less fear-based and a little more, you got one life to live. Let's go live it. So for me personally, it hasn't changed my life. I go out and do what I have to do all day, every day, and always have. I have a luxury of having a warehouse with a guy working on a car in a 10,000 square foot warehouse. So it's not a bustling beehive of activity. So For me, it hasn't changed. I've looked around and seen how it's affected others around me, and it's just, to me, been sort of a case study in humanity, how the guys I work with, who work with their hands, who work with tools, who go to work physically, the blue collar guys, are utterly unaffected and utterly they're unafraid and they're unaffected. The people who use their minds for work, creative types, things like that, they're affected heavily. And there's definitely a correlation there.
Well, and that shows with, with, I think, your perspective that you bring to, everywhere that you create content. But I wonder more tactically just about things that you may have shifted in how you do programming in this environment. And have you picked up any hacks just because of some of the limitations that may or may not stick when this is over?
Well, yeah, I think I think there's something to be learned from almost every tragedy, and it's kind of our jobs to do that. So when there's a commercial airline flight because of some sort of catastrophic mechanical failure, it's our job to put the plane back together, the pieces back together, and find out where that mechanical failure was, so we can learn. So it's a tragedy, but we're going to learn something, and for me, something like the notion, and again, it's kind of fresh on my mind because I just came off it last weekend, but the notion of going to Houston, I'm in LA, we're locked down. The comedy clubs are going to be locked down for probably another few months, but I can get on a plane, I can go to Houston, I can do a show in Houston, we can record that or stream that and bring it back to people in LA who can't go to a comedy club. And now there's some positive, interesting benefit from this notion, from this pandemic. So yeah, if you bury your head in your hands and you sob uncontrollably throughout this, then you see nothing, you learn nothing. But if you start looking around, you can start figuring out things that you can learn even in the middle of a tragedy.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and I need to ask the audience for a little bit of help with something. But when we come back, we're going to rapid fire with Adam about some of the routines that maybe haven't changed for you so much since the crisis, but maybe it's just how your rituals and routines that help you function as a person to do all that you do. But before we do that, one of the things that's been really hard for people about COVID-19 is that when somebody's sick and they're in the hospital, they are now by necessity being physically separated from people that would give them comfort. And whether there's coronavirus or not, this happens every day at children's hospitals across the country, where kids with life-threatening illnesses are left alone in a bed with nobody to comfort them, even if they have a world-class medical facility and great people on staff to treet them and devoted parents. Nobody can be there 100% of the time. I went through this when our youngest daughter was born, and we were at Children's Hospital for 6 months. And it is heartbreaking when you see how many kids are alone and their parents can't be there. So when we got out, we decided we were going to do something about it. And my wife launched a group called the Koala Corps, whose mission is to bring hands to hold every child in need at Children's Hospital. There are a lot of volunteers that want to help, but what they don't have is enough funding to hire somebody to run the program. So there's nobody to recruit, screen, train, manage the volunteers. And so you've got this need, you've got these people that want to help. There's nobody in the middle. So if you're listening today or if you're watching, I want to ask you to help us solve this problem. The Koala Corps doesn't touch any money. We just provide a platform to give to this specific program. Go to koalacorps.com. That's KOALACORPS.com and do what you can. So we're back with Adam, and it's time to talk about the 10 habit hacks that help you do all that you do, Adam. So are you ready to run through? Because I know we're getting pressed for time.
Yes.
So the first time is, what time do you get up in the morning?
Usually about 8:30, but it all sort of depends when I go to bed. And my thing is I don't have a set time. I just get up when I have to get up. And sometimes it's 5 a.m. and sometimes it's 10 a.m. I just know when I have to get up and I get up accordingly.
And do you have a morning ritual?
Yes. Cold shower or cold pool dunk. Go into the shower, turn it on the cold water, and just let it hit you. It wakes you up. It gets your adrenaline going. It gets your immune system sort of fired up. And it's super healthy, and it'll change your life. And it sounds miserable. And the reason it sounds miserable is because it is miserable, and it's supposed to be miserable.
And how long is it miserable for? How long do you have to do it?
If it's the winter and it's the swimming pool, it's in the shallow end, down to one end, underwater, touch the drain, underwater, back to the shallow end, steam coming off, 38 degrees outside. Yes.
And then everything else is downhill from there.
And you have to do it every day. And if I have to catch 7 a.m. flight at LAX, I still do it. And listen, no cheating. Don't go in the shower, turn it on hot, get your body all toasty, and then turn it cold. Hit it cold first. Do it. Do it for a week. It'll change your life.
Okay. How much time do you spend in meetings versus making content?
Not that long. I have things where I have two shops. I have one where I make documentaries. I have another studio where I do the podcast, and I tell the guy who works making the documentaries, I go to one shop and I go, here we go. And he walks with me. I do a lot of meetings when I'm walking. I go, walk with me from one shop to the other shop. And I go, tell me everything you can tell me in 2 blocks. And he tells me everything he can tell me. And that's our little 6-minute meeting, but they're really effective. A lot of meetings are 45 minutes or an hour. They don't need to be. The person can download what they need to do. Is don't go a year in between those, but once a week, it can be done in 6 minutes. I just say, tell me what you know. Tell me what's next. What's on the docket.
Okay, what are you streaming right now?
Oh, streaming. You
mean, most of us watch TV who don't make shows for a living. I don't know if you have time to watch anything.
What's on Netflix kind of thing?
Yeah.
I don't do a lot of binge watching. I don't do a lot of that. There's an F1 show called Drive to Survive, which is really cool on Netflix. It's just a deep dive into modern Formula One. I love car stuff. I watch UFC stuff. And then I'll watch like TMZ to see what's going on. Like what can I talk about? I want to know the celebrity stories when it comes up on my podcast. So UFC, car stuff, a lot of car stuff, Jay Leno's Garage, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And where do you take your news? How do you get informed every day?
I toggle back and forth usually from Fox to CNN just to see what each network's spin is on it. I'll listen to some talk radio. The CNN side of it and the MSNBC side of it and the USA Today and Los Angeles Times, it's pretty ubiquitous. It's on in every airport. I'll listen to some AM talk just to get a more nuanced or deeper dive into some of this stuff versus the CNN version of it. But I just I'll listen to everybody as often as I can, and then I'll put together the story based on the composite of what I'm getting from both sides.
Okay, so I know we only have a couple minutes left, and so we're off of the habits piece. You know, one thing that I think a lot of marketers would love to hear from you is when somebody slides a piece of ad copy in front of you, what goes through your mind? What are you looking for, and what makes it something you feel good about versus not?
Well, I just had this conversation with my assistant today, which we're talking about doing some live reads and that on the subject of that. And I said, it's imperative that they send over a sample. They send over a version of it. Let us test it. Let us check it out. If we're going to speak about it, let us speak about it from experience. So It's like, Tommy John sends over a bunch of underpants and t-shirts, and then I wear the Tommy Johns, and then I do the Tommy John commercial, but I'm wearing the Tommy Johns as I'm speaking about the product, so like first things first, whether it's underpants or booze or whatever it is, send it over. Let me experience it, and then let me come at it from that experience.
So as a professional entertainer and comedian, how do you feel when people try to write their own jokes into there?
Oh, we learned a long time ago that the best way any of this stuff works is sort of beat form. Don't write a script. You tell us the beats, tell us what you want hit in this, and then let me hit those beats and make it conversational.
So don't overwrite it.
No, it always comes across as sort of stilted, and it's never right. We in-house, they'll give us the script, and in-house we'll break it into beats, and then it can be conversational.
So Adam, do you have any projects coming up that you could share with us? Give us a little preview.
I have a book called Your Emotional Support Animal.
Thank you for that.
Navigating our all woke, no joke culture, which is available for pre-order now on Amazon. It's coming out June 16th, but it helps if you pre-order it because it gets into more bookstores and that kind of stuff. So it's a good book. It's kind of a follow-up to In 50 Years We'll All Be Chicks, which was my first book. I wrote that 10 years ago. Turned out a lot of those predictions came true faster than I thought. And now I took 5 years off from writing books, and I've just come back and written the book I want to write, and it's really funny.
Well, and I know that you're willing to play in the political spaces, but I can't imagine what it's like going from doing a spot on Tucker Carlson and then some of the people that you have relationships with that are coming on your show. Is that a hard tightrope to walk, or how does that work?
Well, yeah, it's true. I live in Hollywood, and I also like Tucker Carlson. And there's an interesting kind of, I don't know quite how to explain it, but there's people I know who hate Tucker Carlson, and I like them. And then I also like Tucker Carlson. And then there's guys that are everywhere in between those guys. And it's not really that, it doesn't have to be as tribal or as complicated as people are making it out to be. Like, I know Jimmy Kimmel, I know Tucker Carlson, and I know they're both really good guys and good family members, good family men, and also good citizens who love this country. So There's no reason that those two shouldn't get along, but somehow that's the world, that's the climate we're living in.
And it seems to be getting worse. And one of the things we see on the advertiser side is that a lot of the brands will pick a side and go, we're never going to go on a program that leans political one way or another, or even talks about politics. So if you and I ever get to do this again, I would love to go deep on that with you, because I think a lot of advertising decisions are being made for reasons that have nothing to do with ad performance or audiences, and entirely about differences of opinion that we can't seem to resolve.
Yeah, it's as if everyone has to declare a major, and you don't have to declare a major. There are things that Tucker Carlson, there are things that he says you can't agree with, and then you cannot agree with 80% of them. I'll tell you what really chaps my hide. I hate it when somebody says, I like Adam Carolla. I disagree with everything he says, but I like, he's a good guy. There's no way you disagree with everything I say. Mm-hmm. My whole spiel is like education, take care of your kids, self-discipline, accountability. What are you disagreeing with what I'm talking about?
But the move is, and I don't know if you've ever had Media Matters come after you, but the move is they take a host, they take a soundbite, and they go, therefore, because he said X, he is Y, so don't sponsor him. And what do you do?
what is the end game for those groups? I don't understand it. First off, it sounds like you've sold your soul to the devil. If you're just going to listen and pick apart shows and find little snippets and then regurgitate them out of context to try to get advertisers to cancel with that. First off, for the love of Christ, just jump off a cliff. Like, you do nothing. You do nothing. You know what I mean? Like, go build wagon wheels. You know what I mean? We get more use out of you as a society. Like, the saddest part of society are the people that do nothing. It's like the attorneys that are ambulance chasers. You know, I don't get it. Where's your soul? Your soul, your job is to have other people be put out of their jobs. That's your job.
Yes.
Go find a mirror and stare into it. Or remember when you were 9, what did you want to be? Is this what you wanted to be? It's so weird. I'm an atheist who is pretty pragmatic, and I'm doing what I wanted to do. I'm sharing ideas. I'm trying to make people laugh. And I like building and cars and everything. I'm making documentaries about stuff I want to make. I couldn't imagine if I just scanned other people's programs, look for passages in their context, try to knock them out of context and get them fired. It's a horrible job. It's sad.
I want to continue this conversation because it is a major issue for advertisers. So closing question, if you could address an advertiser who's going, I want to advertise on, Russia's show or Fox News or anything, but I so disagree with the politics and I don't want all my employees to get mad at me for being there, but it's going to work to grow your business. What do you tell them?
You have to realize that these people are essentially hostage takers. And the more you negotiate with them, the more hostages shall be taken. And your concessions to these people do not get them to take their foot off the accelerator. It just begats more concessions and more you backing down and more apologizing. The only way to get these people to stop is for you to stop apologizing and to not live a fear-based life. Jimmy Fallon got called out for doing blackface, but he wasn't doing blackface. He was doing Chris Rock. And then he issued an apology. He should have never issued an apology. He should have said, I'm a comedian, Chris Rock's a friend, and had a complete and utter context for what went on. But yet he apologized, and that never satiates this group. They want more apologies. The more you apologize, it's fentanyl for them. They get hooked on it like junkies because they're out of control and they're narcissists. And somehow you apologizing to them makes them feel good. It doesn't do anything for them, but they're bad people and it makes them feel better. So stop apologizing. If you're the boss, you're the goddamn boss. It's your business. You do with it what you want. Don't be a coward.
There's no better place to stop than right here. That was wonderful, and we're going to have to share this with a lot of people. Thank you for taking so much time out to talk to us, and I hope we get to do it again.
We shall.
Thank you, Adam.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Adam, thank you. This is a very important topic, and as this series evolves, we're going to be increasingly discussing the very thing that we just ended on, because it's a struggle that every marketer has to navigate in this climate. For show notes from this interview and curated media news, as well as thought leadership, please visit oxfordroad.com and subscribe to our newsletter, The Influencer. Special thanks to Bianca, Kyle, and Jennifer for helping to make this happen. And please remember to subscribe on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. And if you liked it, leave us a review. If you have ideas for how we can make it better, send us an email, podcast@oxfordroad.com. Thank you for spending the time with us today. And above all else, never, never, never give up.